I'd like to open up for discussion the oil and gas well drilling ordinance, which is before us for approval tonight. What we know is if we make any changes to it, or we decide we want to, such as setbacks, zoning districts, and so forth, the process will start all over again, and we'll have to have additional hearings and so forth. My own inclination, and this is open certainly for discussion, is to approve the ordinance, which is much more restrictive, and I favor a more restrictive ordinance. Approve the ordinance so we have something in place stronger than what is in place now. We can always open it up for further discussion as far as setbacks and anything else that we may want to discuss in the future. Obviously, the ordinance can be voted down, or we can table it. But my own recommendation is to approve the ordinance. Other comments from supervisors?
I'd just like to comment, a number of people talked about increasing setbacks, which I think if leave up to Gavin, if that would possibly de facto blocking of anything in some districts.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm not familiar enough with the zoning map specifically. I'd have to defer to maybe Dan and Jeff a little bit on that. I'm good with both Dan's and Jeff, but the question of the additional setbacks is certainly, I think, one that's undecided at the court level. I think there's probably a line that's drawn. Obviously, the bigger the setback you put in place, the more likely you are to be challenged, the less defensible it is. That's not to say that there's not some level of additional setback that might not be permissible, but the further you push that envelope, I think the further you place yourself at risk of potential challenge.
The setbacks that currently are in the ordinance, are those in the state?
Correct. Those mirror the oil and gas act at the red. Correct. And there are many neighboring municipalities who have extended those, maybe not just neighboring, but in Allegheny County, but there are also municipalities that have flat out banned oil and gas drilling, and that's what we know, at least you can't do that. So it's somewhat of an open question as to how far you can go, and that's just a fact. It's a dynamic area of the law, and so we defaulted to the state because we knew that that's perfectly defensible, and essentially left the townships kind of rolling as adding the additional a couple dozen pages of requirements, and then again minimizing reducing the amount of the township allocated for drilling.
Setbacks, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, are also a negotiable item with any potential
Conditional use approval.
Right.
Yeah, I'll say that, as you pointed out during the hearing, conditional use approval does allow the board to place additional health, safety, and welfare type requirements on approval. That's not to say that, should the board, try to, it sort of depends on the factual circumstances of particular development, but there's no guarantee to require additional setbacks. I can safely say that. I mean, it's certainly something that would be subject to negotiation, and hopefully, you think a cooperative applicant would obviously want to do what they need to do to get approval. So there probably is some leeway in that regard.
The other comment I would also have is that I think the majority, if not everyone here, want to keep the gas drilling in industrial zones. I just wonder how many people looked at the zoning map to see where the industrial zones were. Industrial zones basically are, there's one adjacent to Emerald Park, and they're also in the high-density population areas like Indianola and Jewel Ridge, which I think is what we want to avoid. If anything, we want to impact the fewest number of people. That's why the residential estate makes sense, because you have large properties with fewer people impacted on that. My brothers would be eliminated from the industrial zone altogether just to get it further out.
I can tell you, from the way the court cases have generally come down, as many of the residents accurately stated, that it has been, the use is generally seen as a quasi-industrial use. So most municipalities that are updating their ordinances are including it at least in the industrial district. Some that are going beyond that are doing so in order to prevent sort of a de facto exclusion challenge. Obviously, the more area you're permitting it, the less likely it is you're going to be challenged on that front. And I was not at the most recent planning commission meeting, but my understanding was that the input, I think, from the planning commission and maybe some of the public, certainly not all, was that the residential estate district was sort of the least developed and sort of outside of the higher density areas, so as to be less impactful. Now, certainly I understand the comments that were made regarding the environmental sensitivity of that zoning district. It's a judgment call for sure from the board, but I think that's why that was included as part of the where it would be permitted as a conditional use.
And this has been going back and forth for a year. It's been a year since initially sent to the planning commission request to review that, which they brought after a lot of consultation with the solicitor, engineer, code enforcement officer, and myself. They came to a draft of the oil and gas ordinance changes that came to you all, and after review by the Board of Supervisors, there were some additional changes made to that, and so that then went back to the Planning Commission for their review and approval, and is now back, was then brought back to you for authorization to advertise for the public hearings. Now, if you want to make some additional changes, such as those setbacks, I would recommend at this time that you would table that, consider those additional changes, and if you want to input those, we consider those as a group. If there are agreement to make those changes, consider those in the near future. We still have the pending ordinance in place that we have, but if there's an inclination, years worth of work and back and forth, and a lot of time spent, that what we drafted, which is much more restrictive and addresses much of the concerns that have been raised in the town, I would encourage you to just adopt that ordinance as it is this evening.
Well, I think I would be inclined to table it, but I'd also like to read this letter that we get tonight. It's 10 pages.
Yeah, I think the point is well taken that this thing has been going back and forth now, or going through the process now for over a year. And we don't want to just lightly say, well, we're gonna do away with it and then have to start over, or make willy-nilly changes to it, requiring us to start the entire process again. The mayor made a great point, and so did the township manager, that the restrictions placed on the one we are currently considering are significantly more restrictive than the one that is in place currently. The other side of that is that both the industrial and the other area that are authorized or in this pending ordinance allow for conditional use. That lets the board do the same thing we did with this range resources, the one that was just done. We put 44 restrictions, 44 requirements on them in order for them to get to do it. We'd be able to do the same thing with setbacks, with all the rest of the things that were brought up, because the possibility of something being challenged in court, if it's just a broad thing like saying, okay, we want 2,000-foot setbacks, the likelihood of that being challenged might not make it through court as easily as if we say we want the setback increased for a specific request because it's close to a residence, or because there's a school within X number of yards or whatever. That gives us a reason for having that condition, and the courts are going, in my experience with the courts, they're going to consider that a lot more favorably, because you're not asking for just a general requirement, for change of the requirement. You have a specific reason for safety of the citizens to make that setback change on a specific request.
And you can consider those additional conditions on a case-by-case basis.
Right.
Because you may want to have deviations from whatever has been suggested to make those changes in the ordinance. You ultimately still, when something comes in, desire to do something different than what's been
Yeah. I also, with what Dan said, my initial inclination was to recommend that we table this thing until the next meeting, so that we have an opportunity to read through quite a bit of information that was provided by the public during today's hearing.
If you do that, I would encourage any of you that are in agreement with changes, provide that to me so that I can try to get a consensus of what that would be. If there's a desire to have something prepared
I think we make
to
a
amend
provision
what's proposed.
that they have that information in your hands within 2 weeks.
Yeah, just a few comments as well. I think we've done a very good job as a community in making this a far more restrictive ordinance. However, with Supervisor Khan, Supervisor Taylor, I do agree we've got some new information. We obviously take the community's comments very seriously before we make a judgment. And I too would be more aligned with reviewing the information and giving, if it's 10, 14 days, and getting those changes. So I'm table as opposed to approve and change.
Yeah, I think the caveat there is that we would be very careful with making any changes, because as has been said several times by myself and others here, if we recommend changes, we start this whole process over again. And then we've got an entire year to wait, for all these things to happen again. However, I think we need to look at what was provided by the public today to decide whether we want to do that, or if we want to go ahead and approve this ordinance that is pending, or the change to the ordinance that is pending, and then maybe move forward with something else in the future if we find that's necessary. Remembering that we specifically put the conditional use verbiage in here so that we still have the right to say, in this particular request, we want the setback to be increased, or we want certain provisions made so that the public, our citizens, are protected. We can't include everything in a change to an ordinance, because somebody's going to come out, we can make plan A, B, C, and D, and then somebody's going to come up with E. And that's why the conditional use is in there. That's why that verbiage is in there, so that we can respond to each request individually based on where it's going to be located, or where the request for it to be dug is made. So that we can say, hey, no, there's residences here, or we have a handicap school here that we need to pay attention to the needs of those, as was brought up by someone here in the earlier. Those things all can be considered with this conditional use before them. So I think what we're looking at here is, unless there's something really significant that we all feel need to be changed, we should go forward next month with approving this, and then we'll have the restrictions that it provides in place. But I would like to have time to review some of the stuff in case there is something really significant that needs our attention.
Yeah, I think we're almost there. I think we owe it to ourselves in the township to get it right, and I think we're almost there. And we've got communities mentioned, at least in the paragraph or two that we all looked at tonight, South Fayette, Bel Airs, Peters, what have you, that are obviously seemingly satisfied. I think we're near completion, and I can support it.
Just a couple questions, before I give my opinions and thoughts. There were some questions raised tonight that I think would be good, that some of the residents have asked that we should probably provide an answer for. The first one was the law forbidding, and I think the reference there is to the exclusionary law. If you explain that a little bit more, what that means, and what's the predicament that we're in if we make it too restrictive, if we get challenged, then we may lose the ability to put conditions in. So if you could explain what the law is and what our challenge is with that.
Sure. Essentially, the kind of general rule of law in Pennsylvania is if it's a legal, valid use, then you can't ban it completely from your municipality. So you often see, the best example is usually porn shops and strip clubs and things like that.
This is in the Pennsylvania Municipalities Plan, right?
Correct, yeah.
Which governs
All
municipalities' ability to put in land use.
So you'll find that every municipality will have some zoning district where they'll allow, things like cell towers, where you might not want them everywhere, or like I said, the porn shops, the strip clubs, things like that. And because they're just